right into the heart of liberal optimism. He writes, "Why should men love the church? Why should they love her laws? She tells them of life and death and of all that they would forget. She is tender where they would be hard and hard where they would be soft. She tells them of evil and sin and other unpleasant facts. They constantly try to escape from the darkness outside and within by dreaming of systems so perfect that no one will need to be good." That last part is what gets me. Does that not describe the naivete of the liberal project? And I say that as a card-carrying, left-wing, falling, drape me in the purple flag liberal. But I acknowledge that when we laugh at songs or nod at Eliot, we're admitting that evil is real, that we're all capable of it, and we haven't found a way to cure it yet. Remember what Gregory Maguire told us. How many haven't wanted to slash the throat of some boor across the dining room table? Well, maybe just kick him in the shins. But as he pointed out, everyone has the appetite for evil. And the appetite is normal. It cannot be extinguished. That's why Christianity calls it original sin. There's nothing original about it. It's as common as dirt. It's the first one in their world. Were it not for some primordial error, of course, we would all be good, immortal, and presumably naked, and not care a whit. But what Maguire and other religions, I should point out, say is that the capacity for evil is not the result of evil itself. It just exists. We are not fallen from perfection, but this is just the way we are. That's the boring, dreary truth I'm handing out this morning. Evil is not the outcome of original sin. There never was a time when we were perfect, or an era when we were better than we are now. To be human is to have an appetite that reaches to evil, great and small. It's not a problem that could be fixed. And this, ironically, is where classic Christianity and liberal religion are in the same boat. Because both of them and us, think somehow we can get around this evil thing. They think that we can say the right words, go to the right church, and pop, we're in heaven. We think, well, maybe not heaven, but we can work a little sociological magic, appropriate some funds, hire enough social workers, recruit enough good teachers, and suddenly all the children will be good. We do not remember, nor do they, that evil is the price we pay for something we actually cherish very much: freedom. The more freedom we have, the more room we have to make bad choices as well as good ones. Because if we have free will and the room to use it, some of us will always be choosing things that do harm, that are evil, that are sins by whatever definition. In some ways, when you think about it, it's kind of remarkable the world isn't worse than it already is. Most of us think perfectly hideous thoughts, but don't do them. What keeps us from doing it? Well, the law, of course, but there are lots of little evil things that we could do that won't land us in jail. Remember the bullies on the playground, the meanies in the classroom, the crabgrass in the human lawn. You can't pluck it all up, can you? Most of us could cheat and get away with it, at least a little. We all spread rumors a little bit. Sometimes we call it just a little gossip. We've all taken advantage. We've all exploited a little bit, but mostly not as much as we could. What keeps us from being more bad than we are? In the Torah portion this morning, you remember God is angry at Israel for having worshipped the golden calf while briefly talking to Moses up on Mount Sinai. By the way, if you've ever wondered why it is the Israelites took 40 years to make a 5-day journey, that's it. The story is that they abandoned God there at Mount Sinai, and God said, no one can go to Canaan until everyone who came out of Egypt is dead and only their children survive. So it wasn't like they got lost. They literally weren't allowed to go. But back to the story, God tells Moses, being God and all, I see that this is a stiff-necked people. Now, you've heard that phrase before if you've ever been into a church, and you get that it means stubborn. The term comes from when we used to have draft animals, horses, oxen, donkeys, and you put a bridle on the animal. If you want to turn, you tug its neck to one side or the other, and a stiff-necked animal will not go where you direct it. It's going to go where it wants to go. And of course, in the story, the Israelites are supposed to be submitting to the will of God, and they're not. They're being stubborn. Well, they were stubborn for a long time, not just 40 years. In the early 3rd century, one of the rabbis of the Midrashim, Rabbi Ami, asked about this very passage. Is this really a criticism? Rather, it is to the Jews' credit. It's the stubbornness that has permitted us to remain Jews. An outsider people besieged by others for generation after generation, whom common sense said should have laid down and given up 2,000 years ago, are stiff-necked enough to stay Jews even if they were reluctant to become them. The point here is that sometimes what is evil in intent can be applied usefully elsewhere. In psychoanalysis, we call this sublimation. We take an evil, unhealthy impulse and put it in a healthier location. We learn this pragmatically from our parents all the time. Don't do that. You'll have to go to your room. You're going to sit there and think about what you've done. We learn to channel our selfish, wicked, destructive impulses into places where they will do less, if not no harm. Alfred Adler, the great inventor of individual psychology, once boasted, he of the systems, that he thought his psychology could in fact turn a sadist into a very good butcher and a very smart one into a passable surgeon. I'm not sure I'd go along with that, but you get the idea that we think and we have the experience of channeling evil impulses into good places. For example, the Army benefits by having people who are comfortable using weapons on other human beings. We don't want them doing that around town, but in a war, they have value. There is danger, of course, of thinking we can create those foolproof systems so we can channel people into the right places. And of course, political conservatives regularly and wisely point to the failure of all those great society promises that did not create a great society. And of course, the song from West Side Story mocks our belief in social work and psychology. But let's remember, even conservatives of all kinds can fall prey to the grand systems. The Roman Catholic Church is one of the most conservative institutions on the planet, and yet it thought its system was good enough to take care of innumerable priests abusing untold little boys. Remember Solzhenitsyn from last week? Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who said, "The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. No system can keep us from evil thoughts or from evil acts. Evil is just there, built into all of us as a possibility we can all enact. We all have the appetite for it, given the right stimulation." So what do? Well, the only thing we can do is try to be better. I know that's a dull answer. Of course, and that's what laws are there for, and that's what parents are there for. The problem arises when we think laws or parents or anything else can fix it. All we can do is really manage it. And here's the irony I'm ending with today. Last week I said that personal evil and sin is abetted by false modesty, thinking, I can't do much evil, I'm just one person. The opposite is true when it comes to social evil. It is abetted by false confidence that systems whether they're from government or religion, can overcome all of our nature and make us all perfectly good. There's a story I heard years ago about the professor who was a chain smoker. And he went to his fellow professor, a behavioral psychologist. You remember behavioral psychology? The principle behind behavioral psychology is you don't even have to try. If you just follow the behavioral patterns, you can change your life. And so the chain-smoking professor asked the behavioral psychologist professor to design a program so that he would quit smoking, and did so. And a couple of weeks later, the first professor comes back saying, "It's not working." The psychologist asks if the smoker is following all his directions. Well, no. There it is, he says. You have to try.